Marxists are in America, and they are threatening our way of life. I'm Anthony Rader, and this is Politically Unhinged. All right, so our guest today is EPAC founder, documentarian, and author of United States Socialist Republic, H.G. Goerner. Great to have you on here.
Hello, Anthony. Good to see you, sir.
Yeah. So, I want to show you this clip, and it's just two Democrats saying the quiet part out loud. They are in their 20s, so they're very, very impressionable with everything. And so,
they're horrible at their jobs, right? They do a lot of shitty things, although I'll vote for them all the time. But it's also hard in the space to criticize
That's a
them.
good. Can we clip that quote?
Yeah.
Please don't. Please don't. Please don't.
Please
don't. Please
Get
don't.
that back. They do a lot of shitty things. But I'll still vote for them.
Yeah. I mean, like that's the point that we're in this country, sadly, and I'm seeing a lot of young people going ahead and leaving the Democrat Party because, it's people that are young like to revolt. I'm not sure if you're seeing anything like that or.
Well, you said revolt?
Yes. I'm seeing a lot of young people leave the Democrat Party.
Yeah, there's a guy, I forget his name. He's formed a group called Walkaway. And a lot of people, and these are actually middle-aged people, probably in the 30s and 40s, young millennials that are walking away from the Democratic Party. But more importantly, what we have here, there was a guy, and he was a comedian. He kind of put it in a great way. He says, I sent my daughter off to college, and she came back for the summer, and all she was saying is racist, socialist, racist, gender affirming, racist, and he just went on and on with those three words. And he says it was like for 2 days. I said, what have I done? What happened to my daughter? This is not the daughter I sent away. And pretty much at the point, what we have to understand is that a lot of this has to do with the colleges. And I think everybody that knows this. But more importantly, in my documentary, or in our documentary, that I'm kind of the host of it, and we talk about political warfare. This really, we have to start from the beginning. It was actually in this goes back 100 years ago to 1915, 1905, 1908 and stuff. There was a gentleman named Mr. Dewey. And Mr. Dewey was a teacher, very smart man, but he was apparently what they would call the father of modern day education. And he saw, and as many socialists within the United States at that time, they saw the classroom as a place for social change. They saw these children as, this is the engine that we can use. And actually, it was Dewey that started a lab, because when you're in college, you'll often, even in high school, you'll have labs where they get into, that's an actual classroom environment where they actually study a particular, like in chemistry or in sociology, they'll actually have labs. Well, he had in Chicago University back in 1920s a lab where he took young students and he would study the effects of social engineering. Have you heard that term?
Yes, I have heard the term of social engineering, and that's what we're seeing in the public schools now. Is that we're having what we call indoctrination in the schools, but that's
a, I guess what you might say, a layman's term, indoctrination. This is actually engineering a generation where it takes amount of time. It is a full campaign into changing and I mean, virtually moving a child away from the parent. And the parent may say, you know, you were going to have, I want you to, you know, grow up strong and straight. And I want you to, you know, if you want to get in the business, I do this I'm a bricklayer or whatever. I would like my son to follow, or my daughter or whatever, follow in the business or whatever. And they get good Christian, conservative ideals and values. What they see is they were building, basically they take the child and their perceptions and their concepts of who they are and where they are, where they stand in the society. Knowing where you are in a society and who you are, basically, it's more where you are. Where do you stand? Do you want to contribute? Well, they were trying to move away from that. We need social change. So what they had to do in the beginning was engineer a generation. And that was actually, we saw this got kickstarted in my book and in the documentary. I talk about a gentleman named Bill Ayers. Bill Ayers he was part of the Weather Underground in the late 60s. This was a radical, I guess what you might say, what's the best word I can use? A radical extremist group. This Bill Ayers was the head with his wife, Bernadette Van Dorn. They literally bombed buildings and people died as a result. In the late 70s, he was not convicted, but he was indicted for murder. He actually walked out of the courtroom free as a bird because the FBI messed up the investigation. So they couldn't convict him. But he walked out of the courtroom and yelling, "I love it. Guilty as sin," he says. And this is a quote. He says, "Guilty as sin, free as a bird. I love America." And from then, at that moment, he basically went into hiding, and he wrote a book called The Prairie Fire. And then in '84, he came out of hiding with, check this out, with two master's degrees in early childhood education. And he set his sights right on our children, and starting in kindergarten, even earlier. And that's where this whole thing got started almost 40 years ago. Now we're seeing his results of his handiwork with Antifa. And basically we have a full generation of social activists. His whole premise he got this engineered into the concept or into the mindset of these children that America was institutionally, irredeemably bad, and that it needed to be, its imperialist views of itself and around the world needed to be squashed.
Yeah. So all of this secular stuff that we're seeing in the country now all just leads to this one man. That's honestly kind of crazy when we think about it. We like to say that not one person can have quite an effect to all these young people, but they can. It's just like when you put a drop in, just have a drop of water into a pond or anything, it makes ripples.
Yeah. You get enough drops together, you got to know it'll overflow. But more importantly, what he did in our documentary, in his early days into the social engineering concept, he was going around to teachers' unions and explaining to them. We see it in the documentary about how he was telling, well, you know, he would use all this colorful, wonderful language that the social justice is, you know, it's not this abstract thing. It really should be part of the education of children. And more importantly, we can delve. I could talk for hours on how he would. It's through repetition. There's two sides of this. You have to understand that starting in the actually in the middle 80s, you see children which were called latchkey children. Have you ever heard that term, latchkey?
No, I have not.
Okay. Back when the economy in the early 80s kind of went sour a little bit. You saw a major increase in the price of oil, and that's when both parents had to begin to work. And we see that more evident in the 20s now. But what a latchkey child is that where the child was not doing so good in school, and two things were happening basically in the late 80s with this big what's called OBE, outcome-based education. That's a longer story. But with the latchkey children, what we were seeing was children that were not necessarily getting an education. They weren't being taught by the teachers. Now, the teachers were doing everything they could to stuff reading, writing, and arithmetic into the kids' heads. But when the kids got home and they were supposed to do their homework, there was no one home. Both the parents were working, and they were left to their own devices, especially in the inner cities, etc., in the poor neighborhoods. And the children we saw a downturn in the education results, the actual outcome. Not so much, I'm not using the right word, the actual results. We had lower people graduating that could barely read. We had people very barely proficient in math, etc. And that's a result of the societal turns. But more importantly, that's something you can't get away with because both parents are working. Now, here's the point that I want to make. It was in the late 80s and in the 90s when you had Common Core come in. But more importantly, this Common Core was a result of Bill and Belinda Gates being approached by the the teachers' unions. The teachers were literally getting fired. Hey, what, you guys aren't teaching these kids? You're fired. Well, I have tenure. There was a big uproar. So the teachers went to the Belinda Gates and said, we got to do something. These kids, we're going to have to lower the standards so they can pass. And this is an actual fact. So having said that, the teachers were trying to protect their jobs. The teachers union in this country is probably, if not the biggest union, most influential union in the country right now. But more importantly, the teachers went after, we had to have a educational reform. And that's where you see Common Core come in. And I talk about this in my documentary, but more importantly, Common Core lowered the standards, but they confused the whole thing to the point where they were spending half their day on math, or half the hour on math, reading, writing, and arithmetic, and the other half on social issues. But more importantly, you have to see a documentary put out by the HSLDA, Homeschooling Legal Defense Association, which I'm a member of. The HSLDA put out a documentary called Building the Machine. They literally, the Department of Education, which at the federal level, literally put together Common Core. And then they dangled a whole bunch of money in front of every state around 2008, basically. That's when it was adopted, but in 2009. But when we had our downturn, our economic downturn in 2008 and 2009, this was a great opportunity for Common Core to be interjected. But more importantly, the Obama said, "Hey, states here, California, here, Arizona, whatever, you're starving for money. You're almost bankrupt. Here, we'll give you a couple $1 billion. Invoke or insert Common Core into your program." And everybody was saying it was not a federal program. Well, it is. And more importantly, what was happening is, and this is the point that I want to try to make, is that one, the American people have to be consulted. When any legislation like this is going to be put in and a law is going to be invoked or basically mandated. I'm a former appointed public official. I know this. What has to be done is the people need to be notified, a proactive response, and then you got to, hey, come in. We're going to talk about this. We want to get all the American people here. This is what's happening. This was done. This law, this education, this outcome, Common Core state standards was put in and made law without the consent of the American people. It was done in a basically back alley, or what you might call it, under the cover of darkness in the middle of the night. But more importantly, what I want to say is that you have to remember that these children, they are so vulnerable, and this is, I cannot tell you, in political warfare, what you want to do is, if you go after the weakest point, you want to divide and conquer. But more importantly, you want to change the perceptions in political warfare. If you can change the whole ideal of political warfare, which I am an educated person on, is to change the perceptions and concepts of who the people are as a nation. And that's where, and the place you start is with your children.
Yeah, it's what Ronald Reagan said, that was it freedom/liberty is
Only one
always
generation away.
always one generation away,
Yep.
away from death. And it's honestly scary that we're at that tipping point. Like it's what Dennis Prager likes to say is that shoot, he likes to talk about like all the secularist stuff that's going on right now, for one. Two, he also talks about how, like, just him growing up in well, in the 1950s, I'm gonna guess.
Uh-huh.
Yes, he talks about just like being able to go out to have dinner by himself and all. And now we're seeing like it's virtually impossible to do that.
For
That
him personally?
No, I'm just speaking basically for everyone now, because like it's gotten so bad with like crime rates and everything. Because
Well,
if you go to
that's in the
cities
inner
now,
city.
it's yeah.
That's
Well,
in
well,
last night I
yeah,
had a wonderful dinner at a restaurant here in California, and we're seeing a lot of, and this is what you're referring to. First, let me tell you about Dennis Prager. Dennis Prager, bless his heart, he's a good man,
yeah.
but he's very opinionated. He
Oh no, I
is
agree.
he is as far right as you can possibly get. Whatever. I'm not going to sit there and accuse him, because he's
Yeah,
not here to defend himself. The
yeah,
point is, though, I take everything he says with a grain of salt. However, what we're seeing is inundated from the mainstream media, which I have changed the name. You don't see the MSM, mainstream media. It is the MSMM, mainstream Marxist media. It is a propaganda outlet. Now,
yeah.
here's the interesting point. What we have is inundated. It is what's called a now I can't even think of the term. It is a let me get the thought. There's one word right before this. The not the cultural apparatus. It is the God, I can't even remember the name. It'll come to me here in a minute. It is a an apparatus to basically, the mainstream Marxist media is an apparatus to deliver the narrative. And it goes back to a very simple thing that happened many years ago in Germany at the dawn of World War II, with Germany and Hitler and Goebbels. Basically, Goebbels made a great point. If you tell the people a lie enough times, pretty soon they're going to start to question and say, "Wait a minute, I thought that was a lie," and they'll start going, could that be actually the truth?" That's where it gets dangerous. When people start questioning their own values, it's a way of gaslighting. If you've ever seen the movie Gaslighting, the gentleman in that movie with Ingrid Bergman, she starts questioning her own reality, because that's not a chair. That is a sofa, or that is a vehicle or something. Wait a minute, what? That's been a chair all my life. No, you're losing your mind here, and that is extremely dangerous. But he comes at it from a secular standpoint. His whole thing is based on his faith. Now, if he wants to come at it as a secular and say this is very evil, you know what? I'll be honest with you. Is the work of the devil? I can't argue with him. I really can't. This is the very definition of evil if you come at it from a faith-based thing. but more importantly, a lot of this information that you see coming down is constant. It is the apparatus, the mainstream Marxist apparatus that is sparking this narrative. Just this is in isolated spots. It is not prevalent to the point where it's chaotic in this country. But one thing I'm going to leave you with this before we go on to the next subject is about how we talked about Bill Ayers. Now, Bill Ayers, he was infiltrated by an FBI agent, and the FBI agent wrote a book about it. His name is Mr. Grantham. But more importantly, he says, Bill, he says, well, he got Bill's confidence. And he goes, Bill, he goes, you know what? You want to take over the government? Yeah. We're going to take over the government. We're going to, build a better America. Okay. Well, there's going to be a whole bunch of people that aren't going to side with you. Yeah, I know. Well, what are you going to do about them? We'll just have to eliminate them. Okay. It was like throwing out the trash. He would have disposed of 25, 50, 100 million people to his purpose. Just dispose of them. This is dangerous. But here's the most important point, and this is what I want folks to understand about the democratic Marxist mindset. The landscape is literally littered with old Democrats, John F. Kennedys, RFKs, LBJs. The landscape is literally littered with the corpses of old Democrats. Now you see many of them, if not all of them, have moved so far to the left, they're Marxist. And then there's people that are full-on neo-Marxist. But more importantly, this is it's when you have a guy, and stay with me, when you have a guy like Bill Ayers saying, we're going to take over the government, okay, here's the point that I want to make, and I hope people can understand. This is so extremely dangerous. I mean, life, limb, the whole bit, everything you can possibly gather to imagine in your head. Let's say, Bill, okay, Ayers, okay, I'll tell you what, you got a better idea? Yeah, I know how to. Okay, here's the United States government. Here you go. Okay, now, go ahead. He would stand there switching. He'd have his thumb up his ass and he'd be switching things. What do I do now? He had no idea. He could be handed our nation, and he would have no idea how to make it work. What would happen would the nation would turn into an anarchist, chaotic disaster, a literal burning pile of crap. And it's the same thing with the Marxists in this country. Many of them say themselves, and that's why I say, just because I wrote a book doesn't make me smart. I have no idea how to run a nation. I've got a good understanding of it, but you have to be a constitutional lawyer like Senator Ted Cruz, who knows how the three branches work. But more importantly, you could take these Marxists and literally hand Joe Biden. Well, basically, Joe Biden's been handed the government, and what is he doing with it right now? But more importantly, if it were to go, and here's the thing I want to say, this ultimate goal is about ownership of the United States. It comes out of what's called sustainable development. If these Marxists get ownership of the United States, what it's called federalizing the nation. When Obama got handed the United States, and we had that big debacle back in 2008, he ended up nationalizing the education system, nationalizing healthcare, nationalizing the mortgage system to a degree. The next will be labor, and the next will be the banks. I don't know if you understand that, but that's when the nation turns socialist, when they can nationalize all the main departments of the United States government. But more importantly, what Biden's trying to do right now with DEI, but we'll get it. That's a longer discussion. What can happen is that literally this is what Obama Biden can do in the event of a national crisis. This is part of the 4 stages of political warfare. Destabilization, excuse me, demoralization, number 1, destabilization, crisis, then normalization. But more importantly, through a crisis, you heard people say you don't let a good crisis go to waste. You've heard that, right, Anthony?
Yes, I have. I've heard
Right.
Democrats say
COVID
it all the time.
COVID was actually a test by the CCP. I interviewed on our website. If you go to preservingamericaepahc.com, you can see an interview I did with Claire Lopez, a very good friend of mine. She is a former CIA case operator, brilliant woman. We interview a young lady named Lee Meng Young. She was a virologist. She says, hey, it was a biological weapon. They released it. It's a longer discussion, but not so much that they intentionally released it, but they wanted to see how it worked. No, let's see if it'll work. And it got out. They did not. They underestimated the veracity, the virality of the actual of how it could spread so fast. That's how it got out. But they have a biological weapons program in the CCP as what's called a preemptive and attack type of thing. But more importantly, Lee said this is a biological weapon. That crisis, that COVID, was a test, and to see how the United States reacted. And what did Gavin Newsom and very many of the other governors in the state do? In the United States do. Each governor shut down their state indefinitely. Trump said, let's shut it down for a couple of weeks. Let's isolate a little bit. Let's see if we can drop the curve and see if we can get get this baby under control. And then we'll get back to normal. Governor Newsom, without the consent of the people in the state of California, shut down the state indefinitely. That is a violation of our rights. I've talked to his legislative senators here in California, and they said, yes, absolutely, he broke the law. Why didn't Governor Newsom shut California down? Why? You have to ask the question. He shut it down because he could. No one pushed back. If somebody would have pushed back, he was, okay, well, let's have a discussion. Nobody pushed back. We're smarter now. And one of these things that I have to say, as much as I spit this crap out, every person in America can sense it, they can feel it, and they can smell it. And our documentary basically shows you where the smell's coming from. But more importantly, we have to understand is that this is about ownership. And we can go into that discussion if you would like.
Yeah, we definitely can. So we do have a question for you in the chat. One of our listeners asked, if Newsom broke the law, how was it that his rule went unchallenged in the courts?
Well, there's 2 parts to that question. That is an excellent question. Whoever asked that question is on the money. 1, there's an assemblyman. First off, I'm going to take this out of context, whoever this young person was or old person, it doesn't matter. They said, how come nobody pushed back, or how come there wasn't a lawsuit? It doesn't have to do so much with the statute of limitations, but if you're going to push back, you must push back immediately. I'm going to give you a perfect example. Now, I'm not saying that this person, that's not really an answer. Let me go off to one side just for a minute here. There was an assemblyman who actually, after the fact, filed a lawsuit because Governor Newsom sent out ballots to everybody during COVID. You cannot do that. That's a violation of the law. Guess what? The assemblyman that filed that lawsuit won that lawsuit. Okay. Now, here's the thing. And I want to tell folks that I'm going to make a claim. One of the things I've learned is to not put a target on my back by opening my mouth. And when you do that, you make a claim that you cannot substantiate. And even if you can have the facts, what's that? Corinne Jean Pierre said, it was so funny. Remember the I can't remember the actual term, but she was, hey, you're not interpreting the facts right. Well, okay, that wasn't it. But the point is that you have, if I make a claim, I have to be able to substantiate. Here's the point, is that we have to, if a crisis comes along or something like that, and the government wants to push or abuse the power or assert their power and infiltrate like COVID, you have to do it immediately. Now, here's the part that I want to say, and I'm going to make this claim to the person that asked the question. The Republicans in this state and in the federal government are just trying to hold on to their asses. They're not going to push back because the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, has made moves to the point this is going to be a tsunami coming forward in the next, I guess, I would say 7 to 8, maybe 10 years, where the balance of power will shift. There is an immense struggle right now for the global balance of power. The United States has been for a long, long time the top dog. That's about to shift. The Chinese Communist Party have made moves over the years, and they will be the top dogs, top dollar. Their yuan will be the dollar, the signatory. But more importantly, back to this person's question, the Republicans aren't going to push back because they want to hold on to their asses. The elections have been subjugated, and it's a longer story, but they want to ride this wave. They don't want to be pushed out. They don't want to make any headways. And I have people on my team that we beat our heads together. We smash. We're both bloody. Me and my gentleman, I call it, he's my deep throat. We literally butt heads to the point where we're bloody about he believes that the Republicans aren't going to do a damn thing. They're going to just try to ride out the waves and see if they can hold on to their asses in the next elections or hold on to their seats. But more importantly, it can be done. Now, here's the point about political warfare. If the American people, now this might sound to this person asking the question, this might sound not counterproductive, but a waste of time. If something like this comes again, you need to make the phone number, the phones in your congressman and in your senator's office literally not stop ringing. You have to write them a letter, and you have to call their phone, and you have to knock on their door. You will not accept this. If the people push back, Steve Bannon, who I've been trying to get an interview with forever, and he'll probably put, I'll probably, this guy would just laugh at me. This guy has been in the belly of the beast, and he probably won't be interviewed by me because it would be a waste of his time. And I'm exaggerating. But Steve Bannon says, it's up to the American people now. If the American people want to preserve and save this country, it's going to be up to us now.
Yep.
The congressmen or senators, until we force them to do what we ask them to do, then guess what? Nothing's going to be done. That's your question answered in a long term. But here's the point: we can push back. It takes money. One of these things that we see, and here's a good point. We see a lot of the school boards being inundated by parents pushing, causing them, and then Biden was basically calling them domestic terrorists. Now, in their effort and their passion to protect their children, they're going to the wrong people. The school boards are the enforcement wing of the state laws. They're useful idiots. They're yelling at these people. They're just sitting there taking it. You need to change the laws. For well over 2 decades, the Democrats have been putting the laws on the books and under the cover of darkness. And guess what? We need to change those laws. They take money. You get initiatives to amend those laws. One of those laws is that for instance, here in California, they have actually decreased the penalty for a pedophile having sex with a child. Basically, is now a misdemeanor. And here's one of the things at the UN. The UN said pedophilia is a sexual orientation. It is a human right. All you have to do is write the UN, don't let their phones stop ringing. You put enough pressure on them from the American people, they will get things straightened out. You have to force it. It's up to the American people now. And if something, like I said, with that person, if there's no congressman doing anything, then it's up to the American people. You force, and if you go to the United Nations and look this up, they actually said that pedophilia and who gets the consent from a child, that's just basically a human right.
Yeah. Once again, we are with author, founder, and documentarian and H.G. Goerner, with EPAC, Ensure the Preservation of America. So at this time, I want to first just want to let you guys know we still have a sale going on in the merch line. Go to tinyurl.com/pu merch.
I love it.
Yeah.
Politically unhinged. I gotta get me one, dude.
Yeah. I'll send you the stuff. I'm actually going to be showing some of the stuff right now for you.
Great.
Yeah. So
do a little advertisement.
Yes, this is my little advertisement. So as you can see, I have already announced my presidency for 2036. That is the first year I am officially eligible to run. Right here we have our new Bud Light merch that says, "Don't pass me a Bud Light. I am not gay." And then we have our "Secularism is a disease. And he is the cure" shirt. And everyone's favorite, probably one of my most viral clips, saying Jeffrey, whatever the fuck your name is so. And here's just our basic merch right here for politically unhinged.
I like it, politically unhinged.
Yes,
I'm getting me one of those. Oh, and a cup too. I'm gonna get me a cup.
That would be amazing. Yes, our code is Cunt Light. That is Cunt Light. CUNT Light.
Okay. All right, you got it. Jesus. But I love politically unhinged because at this particular point, the Marxists are so unhinged.
Yes.
It is stunning. Unbelievably stunning. Ariana Presley just the other day on MSNBC was talking about how she didn't want to have a debate. They're not going to have a nomination campaign. They're just going to throw Joe Biden as the nominee. That is basically excluding all her constituents and all Americans who are Democrats from the process. But what I want to talk about right now is two things, and this will carry us to the end of the hour.
Before we get to that, we have two questions based on our last segment. So,
well, those are more important than it might be.
Yes. So one of our listeners asked, well, thank you for your answer, but he's wondering, how do we fight back and become full-time activists? They're saying most of us got to work, raise kids, help elderly parents. The left has paid activists, but patriots don't have it so good. Well, I could also answer this myself. All right. Any of the free time that you got, you got to speak out. Speak out on everything. And I think you can agree with this. I mean, even if you agree with what they're saying, speak out 100% of the time. The only way that we are going to solve this problem is if we speak out.
Well, first off, at the very beginning, Anthony, you nailed it. Absolutely. Everybody in this world, in America, wants to just raise their kids, go to work, and be able to trust have a barbecue on the weekends, take their kid to soccer practice, not have to worry about the bullshit
Yeah.
with the federal government and the state and local governments screwing everything up. This is an absolute power grab of such proportions. It is absolutely stunning. That's what the people want to do. The public trust in the system is virtually gone. That's what we talk about. The title of my documentary is called America on the Precipice. The American people just want, Kim, I just want to take my kids to school. First off, what you got to do is spend a little bit of your time on the weekend, maybe an hour or two, or at the end of each day, spend 20 minutes. Don't watch the TV. Don't listen to MSNBC. Don't listen so much to Fox. Listen to Tucker. Now, even though he's gone now, follow him. But more importantly, educate yourself.
Yes.
And I think most everybody can see the parents, the people, the families raising the kids and stuff. They can hear and they can see and they can smell this shit because it stinks to high heaven. The best way you can do to push back is notify both your Democratic congressman and senator that you're fed up with the bullshit. And more importantly, if you have a congressman or a senator that you support, send them a letter. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot tell you how important it is to send these people, both the Democrats and both the Republicans, the Democrats that you're tired of the bullshit and the Republicans that you support, tell them that you support them. Send them a letter. You don't necessarily have to call them, but by God, send them the letter. Then here's what I want you to do. Listen to me very carefully. Tell all your friends to do the same thing. If they get enough letters in their offices, they'll start to see, and things will start to happen. I'm actually a founder. I put together a program called PAM GPS. Please alert me GPS. There's a new system, a technology system that can alert victims of domestic violence in real time before they get hurt or get murdered. Thousands of victims of domestic violence are murdered by their former intimate partner every year. And what I learned is from putting that together a few years ago was to basically just inundate in fact, I'm trying to get it adopted here in the county where I live, and we're almost there. But you need to notify your legislators, your congressmen, your senators, your local board of supervisors. Send them letters about your discontent and about those you support.
Yeah.
And the second question?
So the second question's one I can answer pretty easily. So they're asking, all right, how do we watch the documentary? How do we keep up to date? Well, it's pretty easy. Yeah, I'll actually share the screen with all of you. What you want to do is you want to go to Preserving America, epac.com, and you can. This is all the information that you need for the great organization, and love it myself. And just click on documentary, and it will take you to it'll take you right there basically, and it will put you on Vimeo once you say that you want to watch it. And it's $2.99 to rent and $3.99 to buy. So highly recommend everyone goes check that documentary out. Like he said, he's just pointing out where the stench is. It's like I said all the time, is that like we should be able to just say that a duck is a duck, and this is basically what he is doing with his documentary.
And if I may add, Anthony, basically it's about political warfare. And here's the interesting point about this. As much as I was, I guess, a self-proclaimed expert on political warfare, I did not find this out until years ago. I've been working on this for 10 years. Probably 5 or 6 years ago, I found out that it was actually in the very early 60s. Now, everybody, I'm sure that everybody listening knows about the Cold War. There was in the 50s. After World War II, the Soviet Union was conducting a Cold War in Europe, and et cetera. Then you had, I don't know if everybody knows about Nikita Khrushchev back in the late 50s. he actually was pounding on the podium. We will bury you. He actually, I believe, he took off his shoe. If I remember correctly, he took off his shoe and he was beating it on the podium, yelling at President Kennedy, "We will bury you." Well, President Kennedy said, oh, "Okay." Now, here's the thing I want to say is that during that heavy Cold War, we saw shortly after, not too long after, the Soviet Union with the planting nuclear weapons, basically launch sites. This is not the Bay of Pigs. This is the Cuban Missile Crisis back in the early '60s, where in the under the cover of night, the Russians were working with Cuba, and they put missile sites like right across the street from us. And President Kennedy said, no. And that was a major, what's called detente. They had to come to some sort of thing, or it was going to be all out. And we were literally on the brink of nuclear warfare. Nuclear warfare and the threat of nuclear warfare is what's called a deterrent. When you have more weapons, okay, you have the position, stuff like that. Nobody wants to use it because it will be the destruction of everything we know. They use it as a bargaining chip. But more importantly, it was shortly thereafter, and I found this out about 6-7 years ago, that President Kennedy, before he was assassinated, began and instituted an majorly intense political warfare campaign on the USSR. Political warfare has 4 stages, but more importantly, it's about ideological subversion. And it is overt. It's right out in the open. I have people that are associates of mine that I've talked and interviewed before, and basically they just want to. They told me, Hugo, you're crazy. You're going to get killed. Well, nobody gives, because I'm not going to get killed. And if I do, so what? I'll be fine. The point is that these people, they knew if they pushed back in the Soviet Union, they would disappear. Yeah. They said that I'm courageous. That's bullshit. The point, what I'm saying is, these people saw the same thing happening in their country in the late 80s that is happening right now here in the United States. More importantly, I want folks to understand that the Soviet Union, with the actual political warfare campaign that President Kennedy began in the early 60s, we waged that intense campaign on the Soviet Union until 1992, and we won that war with the dissolution and the dissolving of this United States, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. We won that war. Now, a handful of Marxists in our country, the Biden administrative state, and many of the Marxist organizations here in this country are waging political warfare on our country.
Yeah. All right. So we got 2 more questions. Thank you guys for blowing up this chat. Basically, this is honestly great. I'm happy that we're able to ask these questions to such a bright and wise man, even though that he says that he is not smart, but you are smart.
I'm no better than, I'm no smarter. There's probably a lot of people that are better educated than I am. But I want you to understand, if I may say, Tony, this is very good. When you're getting people asking questions, that's exactly what we want. Exactly. Yeah. I want, here's the whole thing is, part of this thing is designed not to have people think critically.
Yeah.
It's just accept, it's going to be fun. Trust us. No, we don't fucking trust you. Excuse my language.
Oh, no, you're fine. I don't care. I curse on here all the time.
Okay, well, here's the thing I want folks to understand. There's a difference between our government and the administrative state. I'm a former appointed public official. Our government works. Just a few years ago, it was working fine. What the hell happened? The Marxists got control of Biden and the Biden administrative state. Now they've commandeered all the agencies, and they're censoring you. What was that person's question? I want to hear all of it. Every question.
Yes.
We'll be on this show for 2 days.
Yes. So it's kind of a 2-parter. All right. So it's related to getting more people involved. So if religion has been the bedrock of a lot of conservative revivals. Was why is the current conservative movement seem completely non-religious? Have we become religiously unhinged too? Well, personally, I think it's our religious foundations that are going out there and they're going ahead and backing all this stuff. Sadly, I mean, like we're seeing this. Hell, Mitt Romney, Mormon. All right, he codified gay marriage into law, and then the LDS Church went like, "Yep, that's fine. That's fine. You can be gay. Good job." I'm not sure if you agree with me. I think it's more of our religious foundations, and it's not us particular as Christians and that are negating religion.
You're touching on the subject. You're right. You're hovering right above it. The right of religious freedom and the right to not have religion is part of that. We have to understand that many people are moving away from religion, but that doesn't mean that they're moral or they're not moral. Many people. I was raised a Catholic. I was an altar boy, but I haven't been to church in ages. But I've actually developed a stronger sense of the Lord in my heart, and I understand. I carry on a conversation with him every couple of days. He doesn't answer me. When he answers me, I'll know we're done. The point, that's a joke. The point is that I have a connection, but also people have the right to move away from that. Now, what we're seeing, you got to understand that we're getting inundated by the actual cultural apparatus, or the what Tucker Carlson calls the apparatus, the information apparatus. You're getting that a lot of people are moving away from the Lord and stuff like that. Trust me, they are not.
Yeah.
This is part of the information that you're not getting. We have the right to speak out. And, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be posting a thing about the Kennedy speech that on our website here in a couple of days about the Kennedy speech. You have the right to hear information. When they censor that stuff, guess what? That is the very thing they did in Nazi Germany. They burned the books.
Yep.
We talk about it, the burning of the books, censorship and silencing. They want to silence you, censor you, arrest you, and if they can't do those three, they'll take you off the grid permanently. I guarantee you. But more importantly, just because you're not moving away, you're not following the evangelical or whatever, and going to church every Sunday doesn't mean, well, to be honest with you, doesn't mean diddly.
Yeah.
Many people still have that I guess that relationship with a higher power or whatever. But more importantly, we'll talk about this in our next podcast at a later date. And we're not done yet. We may go on this sucker for 2 days.
Yeah, we are going to. I am going to have H.G. Goerner on again. So any questions that we do not get to right now, we will ask them on a later date. Hey, these are great questions. Thank you guys so much.
They're inquisitive. That's what we want. That's the critical mind, the critical thought processes. Oh, wait a minute. Don't, even what I'm talking about, you've got to investigate that. Don't listen to me just because I'm handsome. Listen to me because I've got information out that you can actually look into. But more importantly, I want folks to look at this. We'll take the next question. Look into Christian nationalism. Have you heard that term?
Christian nationalism.
Yes.
It does ring a bell. I'll be honest, it does.
One of the members on my team is a brilliant man, Stephen Coughlin. He is the head of Unconstrained Analytics. He is actually, I interviewed him in the documentary, and it's a subset that you get if you order the documentary. We do not necessarily, because I had to condense the documentary because it could have gone on for days.
Yeah.
If you rent the documentary, you can see a little subset of a 40-minute interview I do with Claire Lopez, and about a 45-minute interview, I believe, with Stephen Coughlin. He talks about neo-Marxism and how it's infiltrated this country. He's brilliant. But more importantly, he talks about how this this whole Marxist agenda, and remind me of the question again we were talking about.
Yes. So this last one, let me pull it up.
Oh, it's Christian nationalism. He
Yeah.
is an expert on Christian nationalism, and I want folks to look into Christian nationalism. The evangelical churches, the Catholic churches, the basic, the I guess the Episcopal, etc. They've been commandeered by the white supremacists. They've been commandeered by the Nazi Party, white supremacists in this country. And guess what? They call themselves good little Christians. They are not.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like you've already answered these two questions within that answer, but
Let's
it was
answer.
but doesn't the fight against Marxism require a stronger belief in God and religious institutions? How come? How can we fight against a godless regime like Marxism if we are less religious ourselves?
Being religious does not mean you're amoral. You cannot go to church every Sunday, and you can be just as much a religious person or belief, or even more. Your foundations in a God or something greater than yourself can be more intense and more wonderful and bring you more joy than any religion. It's up to the individual. I practice my faith in how I treat my fellow man.
Yeah.
A gentleman that worked for me the other day, he blew up his truck. It just, for some reason, the engine went. And so now we're working on I'm going to put the down payment for him and get him a truck. That's just what I do. He's one of my best foremen, and that's just what we're going to do. That's what I'm talking about. You don't have to have religion. You can be so moral that you will follow the Lord as best you possibly can, and you will treat your fellow man as you want to be treated. And that's the very foundation. Religion, the actual going to church, is how we practice our faith.
Yes.
I practice my faith in how I treat Anthony and how I treat all my associates and my friends. But more important, you don't need religion to be a good person. Now, if you want to have religion in your life, I'm 100% behind you. It's the individual. What they're trying to do is group people into this stuff. Don't let yourself get grouped into that.
Yeah. I 100% agree. That is what I believe as well. I'm not a practicing Christian myself at the moment, but when I do move to the state of Virginia, I will be attending church because that is one way for me as a young guy to meet people of like minds.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, once again, this is H.G. Goerner, founder of EPAC, ensure the preservation of America. Like I said, great mind. And like he said, all right, this is not the last time we are going to be talking on this stream. Once we're able to get stuff going on and get our schedules we will be getting to more questions and another interview going on.
Have we got time for one more question?
Oh yeah, we got plenty of time to do one
great.
more question. You want to do this last one?
Well, what I wanted to say is that we can win this war.
Yeah.
This all is not lost. But one of the things I want to leave the people with, I want to ask two questions. I want you to go and rent the movie if you would, but tell your friends about it. Because you have to kind of one of the things I talk about in the documentary is in the beginning of it is how two things: you will own nothing, but you will be happy. That's a World Economics Forum.
Yeah.
Now, that's a whole other state. But I also talk about this is the Constitution and how just a little over a year ago, a disclaimer. The Biden administration had the National Archives Records Administration, the National Archives. That's an agency within the Biden administration. Okay, he got them to put a disclaimer on the Constitution. Did you hear about that, Anthony?
Yes, you actually told me about it on the phone call. So
that's part of the political warfare.
yes.
There's a lot of talk going around that our Constitution, the very foundation of our nation, is outdated, etc., and it needs to be cast out and a new Constitution written. When you start messing with that, that is extremely, extremely dangerous. But more importantly, I want folks to understand. I would like them to go to watch the documentary, but spread the word. Tell your friends about it, and then analyze. When I take I go step by step by step. Take that little segment, stop it, and write it. Oh, what do you mean disclaimer? And then investigate it yourself. Don't take my word for it. And then all of a sudden, the light's going to come on. You're going to go, son of a bitch, Jesus Christ. Now here's the thing. This is about ownership.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, once that happens, literally, Anthony, with the stroke of a pen, everything can change. I was trying to get an interview with a young lady named Amy Swearer out of the Heritage Foundation. Brilliant young lady. She's a scholar. She was before Congress. She's a gun rights expert. And she's talking about how all this gun legislation ain't going to change a damn thing. You're not going to you're not going to stop these mass shootings. And here's what she said. She said, one day you're going to be a law-abiding person, and you're going to have a particular gun, and it's going to have a little piece of equipment with it. Then in the darkness of night, the next day, they will write a law and they will pass it and they will put it on the books. And the next day, you will be a criminal. This woman absolutely nailed it. And this is where the federal government can federalize and take ownership of the United States of America. That's a longer conversation. Once they take ownership, it's over.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. All right, so we'll do this one last question and for you, and we'll wrap things up. And like I said, I will have you on again. It was a pleasure to actually have you on here. I actually set myself a goal when I met you at CPAC that I wanted to have you on here actually in July.
Wow.
Because I said that once I am at the point where like I am around like 350 subscribers on YouTube.
Mhm.
I did not think my channel would be getting as big as it is right now.
Well, I wish you a lot of luck. And also, if I may say, we ought to start doing this a couple times a month.
All right, yeah.
Sundays a month,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you want to have me over at EPAC, I'll gladly come on.
Absolutely. I'll do one. You do one this in the beginning of the month. And at the end of the month, I'll have you on my basically, I have a news outlet too, and I interview all kinds of people.
Yeah, that sounds great. We'll definitely get doing that. I'm really excited for that. All right, so our last question, once again, and asking about Marxism, topic. So, how do you teach morals and values if you have less parents in the home, more wokeism at schools, and kids that need some type of moral foundation? No.
Well, I'm not a parent, but it was actually Jordan Peterson. You've heard of Jordan Peterson, right?
I love Jordan Peterson. And,
I've been to one of his lectures, and literally at the end of the lecture, I was embedded into my seat. I was stuck I couldn't get out of my chair. This guy, when you see, he'll start speaking for about 20 minutes, and then he'll kick it into high gear.
Yeah.
And it just, and you start getting this information. And here's the beautiful thing about this. An idiot like me understood everything he said. Absolutely understood. He touches that there's an interesting thing about what he says, and we'll get into answer your question. When somebody's trying to bullshit you, there's a little, you don't say anything. that sounds like bullshit. Okay. And you just blow it off. But when somebody's telling you the truth, it has a distinct sound. You know it immediately. You know they're being honest. They're not only being truthful, but they're being honest. This is what Jordan Peterson is. And he talks about how the parent absolutely, the more the involvement of the parent in the child's life, the more stable the child is going to be.
Yeah.
And to answer that person's question, if you're unable to put the child into private school, the best way I can tell you is spend some quality time, at least an hour a day if you can. If not, 5 hours on a weekend. Spend with that child. Sit them down and talk to them.
Yeah.
Just talk to them. What did you learn in school? Talk to them and give them, because what is happening is a transference is taking place. That fuzzy little, in fact, in my documentary, there's a gentleman named Jed Brown, and he talks about how the parent is being marginalized in the child's eyes. Basically, and this is a longer discussion. We'll talk about this, and I'll show it how it happens. But the parent is absolutely vital. Set aside some time, especially at dinner, if you have a chance at dinner. If not, after they're done, or after dinner's done, or on the weekend, sit down with the child. If you can get the child out of the public school system, you got a better chance of the child growing up in a better equipped for the world. The world is a nasty place, and I guarantee you, if you equip the child with the right coping skills and being able, because that's what's happening. Many of the children today are lacking coping skills. If we could give the children the ability to say, hey, this place is messed up, which you got to be smarter than the other guy, not stronger, but be smarter than the other guy, and not say, I'm smarter than you. Just be ready to be, hey, wait a minute. Okay. You can see where the bullshit's coming from and you can deal with it. And basically it has to develop what's called a strong, a morally, I guess, educationally strong person, where their education gives them confidence, and that's going to help the child. That's our future, and you've got to, and I don't many, and I have to try to be very, very understanding and compassionate. Lord, let me be an instrument of thy peace rather than be understood. Let Hugo be understanding. Many parents don't have the time to do. If you can, ladies and gentlemen, I beg you, sit down quietly by yourself, close your eyes, and just ask for the strength. It will, if you ask, it will be given. Ask for the time that you want to spend with your child, even if it's a half hour, if it's an hour or more time. Ask. If I were you, I'd ask for all the time I could get with my child and combine contact with, bond with them. There's a bond there. But what is happening, ladies and gentlemen, is the schools are taking away your child. The government is intervening between you and your child, and they will become wards of the state. You will no longer have anything to do or any say in your child's upbringing. This America, ladies and gentlemen, stands on the precipice. It's up to you now. Ask the Lord just quiet, sit by yourself and ask, and the strength will be given to you.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Once again, thank you for coming on, Hugo. So gonna end off this podcast like I always do with a quote, and I think you'll agree with this one as well. So,
you gonna click it on?
Yep.
There we go.
Famous quote by Ronald Reagan: "There is no limit to the amount of good you can do if you don't care who gets the credit."
Bam! Bam! There is no amount of good that can be done if you don't care who gets the credit. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
All right.
You know what? You know who's going to get the credit? All the hard work and stuff you can do. Guess who gets the credit? Your children.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, that's perfect. Love you, Anthony. Thank you so much, my friend.
Yeah.
That was great. We're going to do this a couple times a month. I'm going to have you on at the end of May. Okay.
All right. Sounds great. Yeah, I should be moved in by then. So
We'll be in touch.
All
God
right.
bless you, my friend. It was awesome.
God bless you as well. And God bless everyone that's watching.
Thanks, guys. We love you. Stay in touch. Go to EPAC. Go to Preserve.